I didn't cry when I found out. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't call anyone. I just sat at my desk at 2047 on a Tuesday afternoon, staring at my phone screen, and thought, so that's what she did with it. The alert came from my bank. Unusual activity. A hard inquiry on my credit, one I never authorized. I clicked through, and there it was. A personal loan application submitted 4 days earlier. $43,000. My name. My social security number. My date of birth. An address I'd never lived at. I knew immediately. Not because I had proof yet, because I knew my brother's girlfriend. I should back up. My name is Ivy. I'm 29. I work as a risk analyst at a mid-sized insurance firm, which means my entire job is identifying when something doesn't add up. I look at numbers the way other people look at faces. I read them, I remember them, I notice when something is slightly off. It's not a skill I had to develop. It's just how my brain works. My brother's name is Cole. He's 34, and for most of my life he's been the kind of person you root for, even when you probably shouldn't. Charming. Funny. Completely unreliable. He's bounced between jobs since he was 19, construction, bar work, a brief and disastrous attempt at being an entrepreneur that cost our parents $11,000 they've never mentioned again. I love my brother the way you love a song that's slightly out of tune. You know it isn't quite right, but it's familiar enough that you keep it on. His girlfriend's name is Tess. They'd been together about 2 years when this happened. She was 26, worked part-time at a nail salon, and had a smile that was always just a half-second too slow. Like she was calculating something before she let it land. I noticed it the first time I met her. I told myself I was being uncharitable. I wasn't. 6 months before the loan alert, Cole had asked to borrow money, not from me directly. He'd asked our mom, who told him she didn't have it, who then called me to see if I could help him out. That's how it always worked in our family. A relay race of avoidance. Cole would ask Mom would ask me, and I'd be the one who either said yes or was quietly resented for saying no. This time I said no, not unkindly. I called him myself, which I think surprised him. I'm not going to lend you money, I said, but I'll help you make a budget if you want. He laughed like I'd made a joke. A budget, Ivy, come on. I mean it. Sit down with me for 2 hours and I'll show you exactly where it's going. He said he'd think about it. He never called back. 2 weeks later, Tess added me on Instagram. I accepted because I thought it was her being friendly. She sent me a message saying it was so nice to finally connect. I said something generic back. That was the last we spoke directly until everything fell apart. Later, I would understand that she'd been studying me. My job, mentioned in my bio, the posts I'd tagged with my location. The Alumni Association page where my full name was listed alongside my degree in finance. She'd been building a picture, quietly and methodically, and I'd handed her the frame. I didn't call Cole when the alert came through. I want to be clear about that, because people have asked. They expect that my first instinct would be to confront, to demand an explanation, to give him a chance. But I've worked in risk long enough to know that the moment you tip off the person you're investigating, you lose. Evidence disappears. Stories get coordinated. What was careless becomes careful, fast. So I didn't call. I pulled my full credit report instead. There were 2 hard inquiries I hadn't made. One was the $43,000 personal loan, still pending approval. The other was a credit card application from 8 weeks earlier, which had apparently been approved. The card had a $6,000 limit. It had been maxed out in 11 days. Groceries, gas, a nail salon in my brother's neighborhood, a furniture store, a weekend hotel stay. I sat with that for a long time, $49,000. Give or take, not a mistake, not a mistanting, a sustained, deliberate campaign. I closed the credit report and opened a new spreadsheet. Then I started working. Over the next 10 days, I documented everything. I filed an identity theft report with the FTC. I notified both lenders in writing, certified mail, tracked that the applications were fraudulent and made without my knowledge or consent. I filed a police report, which required me to sit across from an officer who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else and explain, calmly, that yes, I believed it was someone I knew, and yes, I had documentation. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell Cole. What I did do was call the bank where the credit card had been opened and ask a very specific question. Had the applicant come in person, or had the application been submitted online? In person, they said, which meant someone had walked into a branch with identification, either a very convincing fake, or, and this was the part that made my chest go tight, my actual ID, which I had lost briefly about 3 months earlier. I thought I left it at a restaurant. I'd reported it and gotten a replacement. Hadn't thought much of it after that. I thought about it now. I pulled the date I'd reported the ID lost, cross-referenced it with the dates of the credit inquiries. The card application came 11 days after I'd reported the ID missing. That's not coincidence. That's a timeline. I added it to the spreadsheet. The part that's hardest to explain is what I felt during those 10 days. People assume it was rage. Some assume it was grief, that the betrayal of family trust would gut me the way it might gut someone else. But honestly, I felt almost nothing. Or not nothing, more like a very clean, very focused kind of cold. The same state I get into when I'm working a complex case at the office. Everything goes quiet. You stop feeling and start seeing. My therapist, when I told her about it later, said that was dissociation and not necessarily healthy. Maybe. But it got me through. The one moment I cracked was on day 6. I was reviewing the hotel charge, a weekend stay at a boutique place about an hour outside the city. I looked it up. It was the kind of hotel with a spa and a vineyard view and rooms that cost $380 a night. And I just thought, she was relaxing. She was having a nice weekend, drinking wine, somewhere pretty. On my name. I closed my laptop and sat on my bathroom floor for about 15 minutes. Then I got up, washed my face, and went back to work. It was my mother who broke the silence, not me. She called on a Thursday evening, which was unusual. Mom usually texts. When she calls, it means something has gone sideways. "I need to talk to you about Cole," she said. "Okay," I said. He called me. He said there might be some trouble with a financial thing. He said it wasn't his fault. It was a misunderstanding and he really needs the family to come together right now. I let a beat pass. "What kind of financial thing?" I asked. He didn't explain exactly, but he was upset, Ivy. Really upset, Ivy. Really upset. He said Tess is going through something and he's trying to protect her. "Protect her? Mom," I said. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm not going to be able to give you details right now, but I need you to trust me. Do not give Cole money. Do not let him into your house right now. And please don't tell him we spoke." She was quiet for a moment. "You're scaring me?" "I know. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything soon." After I hung up, I sat with the fact that he'd already called her. He was getting ahead of the story, laying the groundwork so that when it came out, he'd already be the victim, the confused, well-meaning brother who was just trying to protect his girlfriend from some mysterious trouble. I'd seen that move before. Not from Cole specifically, but I'd seen it. I called my contact at the Fraud Investigations Unit the next morning. Here's what I had by then: a police report, an FTC identity theft affidavit, certified documentation to both lenders formally disputing the applications, time-stamped records showing the dates of each inquiry mapped against the date my ID went missing, surveillance footage request filed with the bank. I hadn't seen it yet, but I'd asked. Transaction records showing the credit card had been used at a nail salon that, after some searching, I confirmed was the one where Tess worked. Not just a customer, she'd processed some of the charges herself. That last one was the piece that mattered most, because it wasn't just identity theft, it was wire fraud. And depending on how the loan application had been submitted, there was a chance we were looking at bank fraud too. I'm not a lawyer. I want to be clear about that. I'm not an investigator. I'm a risk analyst who spent 10 days being extremely thorough. But I knew enough to know that what I had was substantial, and I knew enough to hand it to the right people and let them do their jobs. I sent the full package, everything, organized, tabbed, clearly labeled, to the fraud investigator I'd been in contact with. And I sent copies to the compliance departments of both lending institutions. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. It was a Friday morning, 12 days after I'd first seen the alert. I was at my desk, eating a granola bar and reviewing a claim file, when my phone lit up. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Ivy?" A woman's voice. Professional, clipped. It is. I'm calling from the fraud investigation team. I wanted to let you know that we've made contact with the individual in question. We'll be following up with you shortly regarding next steps. Thank you, I said. I put the phone down and went back to my granola bar. About an hour later, my brother called. I watched his name on the screen until it stopped ringing. Then he called again, then a third time. Then I got a text, Ivy. I need to talk to you. Please. This is serious. I typed back, I know. Let the process play out. He didn't respond. What I learned over the following weeks came in pieces, from the investigator, from my mother who eventually got the full story, and from the loan officer who called me personally to apologize and explain. Tess had used my stolen ID at the branch. She'd come in alone. She'd known enough of my personal details, my address at the time, my employer, my income, which she'd apparently estimated based on information she'd found on a professional networking site, to answer preliminary questions convincingly. The $43,000 loan had been flagged before it finalized, which was why I'd gotten the alert when I did. Lucky timing. If it had gone through, the money would have been wired to an account I'd never have been able to trace quickly. The notary involved in the credit card application was also under review. Whether they'd been negligent or complicit wasn't something I was told directly, but the investigation expanded. That part was out of my hands, which is how I wanted it. Cole, as far as I could determine, had known what Tess was doing. Maybe not the full scope. Maybe he'd told himself it wasn't that serious, or that she'd figure it out before it became a problem, the way he told himself 100 things over the years to avoid taking responsibility. I don't know exactly what he knew and when. I don't think I'll ever know for certain. What I know is that when I called her, he didn't say she hadn't done it. He said I didn't understand how hard things had been for them. He said I had more than enough and wouldn't have even noticed. He said families should take care of each other. I let him finish. Cole, I said, if you had called me and asked for help, I would have helped you. You know that. He was quiet. You didn't ask, I said. She stole it, and you let her. He said he was sorry. I believe that he was, in the particular way that people are sorry when they've been caught. Genuinely remorseful, genuinely scared, but still not entirely sure what they did wrong. Tess was charged. I won't detail the full legal outcome because some of it is still ongoing as I write this, but she was formally charged with identity theft and fraud. Cole was not charged, but he was interviewed, and that interview, I'm told, was not comfortable for him. My mother cried when she found out. Not at me exactly, but in my general direction, that particular kind of maternal grief that doesn't know where to land. She said she couldn't believe it. She said she didn't know how to look at Cole the same way. I told her I understood. What I didn't tell her was that I wasn't sure I'd be able to either. People have asked me if I regret not confronting Tess directly, not giving her a chance to confess, to apologize, to face me before the investigators did. Honestly, no. I think there's a version of this story where I call her up. She cries, she promises to fix it, maybe she makes some small payment and swears it won't happen again, and the family closes ranks around the idea that it was handled. I've seen that story too. The person who stole walks away with a warning and a new lease on your patience, and you spend the next 5 years wondering when they'll do it again. That wasn't a story I was willing to live in. The system isn't perfect. The process was slow and impersonal, and involved a lot of forms and certified mail and being transferred between departments. There were days I had to explain the same thing 4 times to 4 different people. There were days I sat with the very real possibility that nothing would happen, that it would be flagged as a civil matter, that the lenders would write it off, that Tess would face no real consequence. But I kept going, because the alternative was absorbing it, and I had spent enough of my life absorbing things that weren't mine to carry. The loan application was formally denied and removed from my credit history. The fraudulent credit card account was closed and the balance discharged as fraud. My credit took a temporary hit but has since recovered. The FTC record is there if I ever need it. My brother and I haven't spoken in 4 months. Not because I told him we were done, not because there was a dramatic final conversation. He just stopped calling after a while, and I stopped waiting to hear from him. I miss him the way you miss a version of a person that might never have existed. The brother I thought he was. The one who would have picked up the phone and warned me, who would have told Tess to stop, who would have chosen my safety over his comfort. I'm grieving something that might have been an illusion all along. That's the part no one warns you about. Not the fraud, not the paperwork, not the hours on hold with bank representatives. The grief is for the person you thought was in your corner, and the quiet that comes after once you've accepted they weren't. I'm not going to tell you I came out of this stronger. I hate that framing. It implies that the harm was somehow worth it, that the lesson justifies the cost. I didn't need this to happen to learn anything. I was doing fine. What I will tell you is that I came out of it clearer about what I'll carry for other people and what I won't. Clearer about the difference between loyalty and complicity. Clearer about the fact that protecting yourself is not a betrayal of your family. It's a refusal to let them betray you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I opened a spreadsheet. I made some calls. I let the process do what it was built to do. And that was enough. If you're watching this because something similar happened to you, a number that doesn't add up, a name on an account you didn't open, a family member you keep making excuses for, I want you to hear this. You don't have to confront them to protect yourself. You just have to be thorough. Check your credit, file the report, document everything, and don't tip them off until you're ready. The long game isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the only move that actually works. I've thought a lot about what actually happened here. Not the fraud, not the paperwork, not the charges. I mean what led to it. Because things like this don't arrive out of nowhere. They build. Slowly, quietly, across years of small choices that nobody holds accountable. Cole made 1,000 small choices before Tess ever walked into that bank branch. He chose not to call me back when I offered to help with a budget. He chose to stay with someone whose relationship to other people's things was, at best, flexible. He chose at some point to know what was happening and say nothing. None of those choices were dramatic. None of them felt like the kind of thing you'd point to later and say, that's where it started. But they accumulated, and eventually they became something with consequences. That's the thing about cause and effect that people forget. It's not always loud. Most of the time it's just a series of quiet decisions, each one small enough to excuse, until suddenly you're standing in front of something you built without meaning to. Tess made her own set of choices. She chose to study me instead of introduce herself honestly. She chose to take something that wasn't hers rather than ask for help or figure out another way. And she chose to believe that family proximity, the fact that she was with my brother, would insulate her from consequence. That's a calculation a lot of people make. They think relationships are a kind of shield. They're not. They're a context. And context doesn't change what something is. What I keep coming back to is this. Intelligence without honesty is just a tool for manipulation. Tess was smart. She researched me, she timed things carefully, she almost pulled it off. But she used that intelligence in the direction of taking rather than building, and that's where it collapsed. Real intelligence, the kind that actually serves you, is knowing not just how to do something but whether you should. That question never seemed to occur to her. And my brother, Cole, isn't a bad person. I genuinely believe that. But being a good person requires more than good intentions. It requires the courage to act on them. He knew something was wrong and stayed quiet, because speaking up felt harder than staying comfortable. That's a failure of nerve, not character, but the outcome is the same. Silence made him complicit. For me, the hardest lesson wasn't about protecting my credit or learning to document things carefully, though I do both now without thinking. The hardest lesson was accepting that love doesn't obligate you to absorb harm. I loved my brother. I still do, in whatever complicated, grief-adjacent way you love someone who let you down at a fundamental level. But loving him didn't mean I owed him my silence. It didn't mean his comfort was worth more than my safety. I used to think that going to the authorities, on someone you know, someone you grew up with, was a betrayal. Now I think the betrayal happened long before I filed anything. I just chose not to carry it alone. That's not coldness. That's not cruelty. That's what it looks like to take yourself seriously. To decide that your name, your credit, your financial future, your sense of what is real and what isn't, those things matter. they're worth defending, even when the person on the other side of it is someone you love. Especially then, if you're in something similar right now, if there's a number that doesn't add up, a family member you keep making excuses for, a situation where everyone around you is asking you to absorb something that isn't yours to carry. I hope this helps you see that acting on your own behalf isn't selfish. It's necessary, and you don't have to do it loudly. You just have to do it carefully and see it through.